What is the status of human rights in Africa? Human rights are not gifts from governments or from the international community. Human rights are entitlements which a person has because of purely being a human being. And therefore, they are protected at a global level, regional level, and the municipal level. The situation of human rights in Africa is chaotic. Chaotic in the sense that there is a tendency of African states wanting to be perceived to be doing something in human rights area, but actually not doing very much in terms of the institutions they want to build, in terms of the documents which they pass. For example, we did discuss the impact of the Malabo Protocol, a protocol which is supposed to be replacing the International Criminal Court in Africa, but which is not yet in force. A protocol which has been adopted by African states, but none of them has, it has 9 signatures, but none of them out of the 54 African states have ratified it. And this is two and a half years ago. So if you are serious about human rights, once you set out a document, you should go to the logical conclusion. So that's what we were arguing. And second, we were arguing that the Malabo Protocol is built on another protocol to merge the African Court on Human and People's Rights and the African Court of Justice, established under the Constitutive Act of the African Union. That protocol itself, the protocol of measure of the two courts, is not yet in force since 2008. That is 8 years ago. So 8 years ago, you adopt a document, it's not yet in force, it is only 5 ratifications, and yet over it now you build another mechanism of Malabo, on the basis of which is not yet in force. It's like saying you want to build the second floor of a house without finishing the first floor. That's the African way of dealing with human rights, which is very, very unsatisfactory. African governments have never understood the Paris principles, the fact that human rights institutions are supposed to be independent of government, although they are funded by the government. So you find government asking, why are you criticizing us while we are paying your salaries? You see, you must pay, the government has a duty to pay the salaries and also the right to be criticized for violations of rights, where you let the police on innocent people and so on. Human rights institutions should come up when political rallies are stopped without any notice and so on. That they should come in. But now the government, in retaliation, if I may use the word, comes with various measures which make the human rights institutions completely ineffective. For example, you may find a human rights institution being provided with the salaries for the commissioners, salaries for the staff and so on, but no programmatic money. So they cannot pursue human rights education, advocacy, sensitization. They cannot do that work because they have no funds for that. So they are starved of programmatic money, and that's a major problem in Africa. Another measure which is taken by most governments is just to ignore the decisions or the recommendations which they make. They make a recommendation, the government saying, okay, we have heard about it, life goes on. Life goes on. So we have those two bottlenecks when it comes to the operations of human rights institutions in Africa. One, being starved of programmatic money, so they cannot do programs, sensitization of people, advocacy and so on. And secondly, ignoring their recommendations. They recommend that these people whose properties have been destroyed should be compensated. The government says, we have heard that, we have no money at the moment. That's the end of the story. There is a genuine concern that the majority of the cases in the court are from Africa, while we know that there are serious violations elsewhere in the world, which the court is not addressing with the same vigor and with the same intensity. So there is a genuine concern, but that, in my opinion, that is not a ground for people wanting to leave ICC. And also there is the strange situation where countries which have not signed and others who have unsigned the Rome Statute are the one using the Security Council to refer cases to the same organization which they don't subscribe to. So we have a double standard here, and also a situation where genuineness is not shown. So there are concerns, but I think the solution is not for Africans, who actually form the majority block of people who are who have signed Rome Statute. I think 2/3 of African states are members to the Rome Statute. So we have the biggest block. Now the question of leaving, I don't think that is a way out. I don't think there is the way out, because there are still serious human rights violations in Africa. And the court to be there as a potential threat is sufficient to protect normal Africans in the continent. Particularly when they touched the president of Kenya and the vice president of Kenya and the president of Sudan. It indicates that, you know, presidents are not above the law, you know, for the first time. People you always thought are above the law are now being pursued, especially when you see a president or vice or deputy president on the dock. That's enough to show that at least we have somewhere we can run to. In order for the complaints against ICC to go down, I think they need to be global, because this is ICC, International Criminal Court. But there's a lot of concentration in Africa, although I must also say that some of those cases in ICC were brought by Africans themselves. So it is not only ICC, but nevertheless, they need to be global in reach.